Have you ever lost $70,000 because you forgot to send one simple email? That's what happened to me recently. And it's due to a tactic that commercial landlords use to simply screw us if you're not organized and you're not aware. Hi, I'm Tulay, and welcome to the Simple Profit Podcast, where we focus on one thing and one thing only, and that is to share insights and strategies to help you build million-dollar businesses. In this third part of our rent-focused podcast, I want to focus on the rent term, which is the length of your lease. And if you have not had the chance to listen to episodes 8 and 9, which is part 1 and 2 of this series that we're focusing on rent, I really recommend for you to do so. Before we start on part 3 and talk about lease terms, I really recommend working with an experienced attorney on these matters, as laws differ from state to state. And even if you have a good attorney, which I recommend, knowing the big rocks of your lease, or the most important part of your lease, the things that I'm covering in this 3 series, and not leaving it all to your attorney, is what I'm recommending, okay? So let's dive right into it. The term or the length of the lease includes 3 very important parts that we should pay attention to, all right? Part 1 is what we call the lease commencement date, which is typically the day when you get the keys and the rent clock starts going. Second is the length of the lease. Is it a 3-year lease? Is it a 5, 7, 10-year lease? That's what we call the length of the lease, okay? And then finally, you have renewal options. These are options that allows you the ability to renew your lease after the initial terms without having to renegotiate with the landlord, all right? So all 3 are important, as there are serious money and liability that are on the table with each one of those components. And if you're not careful with it, it's going to cost you in the long run, all right? So whenever we see a new space, or me, when I look at it, I'm like, wow, this place could be special for my martial arts studio. I remember the first one I looked at, okay? The excitement of that new business is like really intoxicating. I'm thinking about the areas that are around the shopping centers. I'm thinking about the build out, what colors I'm going to paint the wall, what type of mat setup do I want, where the spectator's going to sit, where the front desk is going to be, and all of that good stuff that comes into building out a new studio, a new business. I'm not really thinking about the lease, the language, because I'm thinking about the number of students I can have, the staff members I can hire, the amount of money I can make with this business if I do it right, and everything else, the excitement that comes with it. But here's the thing. That's the exact thing that we should look at first, the lease. Not anything else, not any of that. Take that romance out of the way. I know it's not sexy for me to say that, but on a business terms, it's important. We can do all of that after we take care of the big rocks, which is the lease, right? This is the thing that can potentially, as I pointed out in episode 8, can kill you personally on a finance level. So don't start to plan out your business before you sign the lease just because you have a term sheet that's offered from the landlord. And the reason why I say that is because when the landlord gives you the keys, the rent clock starts ticking. And then now we are staring down at a very large monthly rent payment immediately. All right. This is before you have to pay your payroll, rent, electricity, internet, all of that. Okay. And then you come last, right? So the first thing you're going to have to think about is that rent cost that you're going to pay the landlord. So how you structure the rent commencement date, or when you take the keys from the landlord, is very important. Why? Because first is a build out, the renovation of your space. As I kind of went over in episode 9, I always recommend to have the landlord do this part, because when it's done to your specification, that's when you take the keys. Because there's delay, issues, permit, whatever that comes with redoing your space is not costing you anything, it's costing the landlord. Re-listen to episode 9 because we really dive deep into that if you need a refresher. Along with the lease commencement date, there's this thing called free rent. Negotiating free rent is an art. I'm going to go over that, how I do this in another series. But today, I want to stress this to you. The more runway you have for your business to take off, the better the chances are of your business being successful. Imagine me for a second, okay? You did so well that when the landlord gave you the keys, your space is built out completely. Not with the mats, the mirrors, and any of the fixtures, but more so the ceiling, the walls, the bathroom. And all you need to put down is nice and cheap laminate wood flooring, which I recommend, by the way. It's very durable, extremely easy to clean. So I got the keys. I had my contractor put down the mats, put down the laminate wood flooring. All of that took 2 days. From the day I had the keys to the day that you put all that down, took you 2 days. I've done this before, guys. And then I've run to the court to get my occupancy permit. And that allows me to officially do business in the state of Virginia. So within 5 days of me getting the keys, we had students on the mats ready to go. That's kind of the goal, and that's what we shoot for with any one of our new location. And this is what we did with our newest location, InCourage Fairfax, which you know now does $800,000 annually in a year. We opened it with $40,000. That's it. And on top of all this, being able to run classes and have all the build out done for us, we also had 6 months of free rent. Think about this for a second. Instead of paying rent for the first 6 months, we had some money for marketing. I allocated $60,000 to open this business. I used $40,000 of it for the build out, which is mats, mirrors, wood floors, all of that. I had $20,000 to do marketing, guys. And by the way, that was the first thing we did when we signed that lease. We started marketing the heck, out of the area. Local elementary schools, flyers to the house, you name it, we did it, okay? And within the first 14 days of receiving the keys, again, we started teaching classes 5 days in, right? We had 35 trials in the My Studio system. Within 3 months of getting the key, we were cash positive. But knowing that 3 months in of my business, I still had 3 months of free rent that we were already cash flow positive. I can pay my person who is running, the main person who's running the studio, and we were paying him well, $55,000 annually at that point. And we had money to cover our rent, which was expensive. It was like $10,000, right? So we had free flow money of about $18,000 monthly already within 3 months. And we still had 3 months of runway to go. That's the kind of start that we want our business to have. And that's the kind of start that you want your business to have. Because when we do that, we give our business all the opportunity in the world to be successful. When we are able to set things up where you have a long runway, right? Because cash is what always kills businesses. If you run out of cash, it's over, right? So for me, I want the least amount of cash put in to start my business. And then I want a long runway, free rent, so that my business has a chance to build up revenue, right? Before I have to pay that big rent check, all right? The second part of the lease term is how long our lease would be. Typically, you have a 3-year lease, 5-year lease, 7-year lease, 10-year lease, okay? Those are the typical numbers. This is where personal preference matters. For example, how risk adverse are you? Are you willing to take a longer lease term for a little bit of savings or a lot of savings on rent? Or are you more comfortable with a short-term lease so that way you have a way out earlier? How much of a run rate do you have? And what I mean by this is, let's say you're operating a business and it's losing $4,000 a month, every month. Payroll, rent, you're just not making the revenue that you need, right? Especially at the start, this is true. When you open up your business, already you're in the red. You're not making any money yet. You're paying payroll, and then you gotta, the graph looks like this, right? This is the amount of money you make. This is the amount of money you lose, and this is the length of time. When you open up your business, the graph looks like this. And hopefully it starts to even out. And you want that even out part to be preferably before your lease starts. And then it goes like this, hopefully. Okay. But at this particular point right here, when you're negative, when you open, what is your run rate? If you're losing $4,000 a month, how many months do you have that you can cover the negative until you can, ramp up your business and make it positive? That determines how long also your lease term should be. If you sign a 10-year lease, and you have to walk away in 3 years, now you got a 7-year liability, right? In my case, $10,000 a month times 12, that's $120,000. Times that by 7 years, I'm looking at an $840,000 debt loan that I have to pay to the landlord, and my business is done at 3 years, right? We cover a lot of this in the first part of our lease term, the personal guarantee. That's in episode 8. Re-listen to that if you need a refresher, or if you haven't heard it, okay? What I prefer is a 5-year lease, personal preference, and one that definitely does not include a full personal guarantee. So that's just my take on it. So now we get to the biggest lesson that I learned recently, lease renewal terms. At our Burke InCourage location, we've been there now for over 20 years. So we've had 3 lease renegotiations, okay? And we did quite well, I think. We secured ourselves a 10-year lease term with the 5-year renewal option. All right. Why did I do a 10-year instead of a 5? Well, we are an established business. We're profitable, and I want to make sure I have security for 15 years. So I signed on a 10-year lease, okay, with the, not a fully guaranteed personal guarantee, with the 5-year renewal option. So I think we did quite well. What that means is at the end of the 10-year, I don't have to renegotiate my lease and lose my leverage at that point with the landlord. I can simply execute my 5-year renewal term. I don't want to move from this space, guys. We make good money from this space. That business made $700,000 last year in net. I'm not looking to move. So that's why I signed a 10-year lease with a 5-year renewal option. Technically, a 15-year lease with an out for me at 10 years if I don't want to continue, just in case something happens. The landlord does not like renewal terms. They like to dictate the renewal process. Let's put it this way. They know I'm successful at the Burke location. They know that within a 3-mile radius, there is no better option than this shopping center that I'm in. And so they know that I'm stuck. So if I don't have a renewal term, if you don't have a renewal term, they're going to raise your rent and there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to have to just eat it. Okay. Lucky for me, I had a renewal term, so I'm good. But this is the part where I screwed up at. Okay. There was a little small provision in this 30-page lease that stated that I had to give them notice between 210 to 180 days before my lease expired if I wanted to renew. Otherwise, my renewal option voids. Okay, now why does the landlord do this? The landlord does this because they know I'm going to probably forget in 10 years. I'm not looking at my lease. So when I read that thing earlier, this is fine, whatever. My lawyer even highlighted that. He said, hey, I recommend just 3 months ahead of your lease renewal term, right? Typically, if my lease is coming up, I'm like, oh man, I got 3 months. Yeah, let me send them a renewal, right? But in this case, they put a very small 30-day window that I had to give them renewal notice or my renewal option voice. Those sneaky bastards, man, I tell you. So sure enough, I woke up one day feeling really good. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, my bank account was flushed, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I feel good. I've been working hard. Maybe I go out and buy my wife something nice because I love her and I can. All right. And while I'm thinking about what I'm going to get her, I get an email from my landlord asking, hey, Mr. Lay, are you intending to renew your lease with us? Because we haven't heard any notice from you yet. So of course I reply back, oh, of course, we're doing well. I've talked with you last week already about our numbers and everything like that. And they conveniently stopped by. Hey, how's business doing? Is there anything we can do to help? So anyway, I responded, yes, we intend to renew. And I went on with my beautiful day. 5 minutes later, another email comes in. Perfect. We look forward to continuing a great business partnership with you. Please see attached for a proposal that I feel is going to best serve both our needs. And at this point, I'm thinking, man, this person's out of their mind. They don't know what they're talking about. So I told him, I told him, hey, I don't need to renew, a proposal. We already have a renewal term. I just want to execute that. But no. She promptly reminded me in the next email, to my surprise, that since I did not email them my intention to renew, which the renewal date, the block of time had expired 2 weeks ago, which was my renewal period, that my option to renew is now not available. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. My whole day just went down the drain at that point. And then after a whole week of going back and forth with this landlord, I realized that they got me. My lease expires in 5 months. I got nowhere to go. They already talked to me. They know the business is profitable. They got me and they know it. Okay. So they stuck me with a term that's going to force me to pay $70,000 more over the 5 years compared to what I had in my offer. And they know that's going to actually cost me more than $70,000 because when this renewal term is up, rent escalation is about 3% every year. If you do the math, okay, if let's say you start with $10 and every year they tack on 3%, right? It grows starting from 10. But if you started at $15 and then the rent escalation goes up 3% a year, you end up with something drastic, like close to $100,000, something crazy like that at the space that we're at. We have 5,000 square foot. They raised my rent amount to $3 more per square foot. $15,000 times that by 5 years or more, maybe even more than $3 per square foot. But at the next time when I go to my renewal term, when I negotiate again, guess what? My rent price isn't going to be whatever it was that I had in my lease renewal term. It's going to be the new higher price rent. So when I escalate it up, it's going to end up costing me hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay, over the long run. Don't be like me. Don't lose hundreds of thousands of dollars because you didn't pay attention to the little details in your lease and you thought to leave all of this to your lawyer, or you don't listen to your lawyer because I was too excited. And you know what the crappy part is? Do you know who really lost in this whole thing? My wife. She didn't get her present. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Simple Profit Podcast. Subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or your favorite platform. Also help me with two things. Share this podcast with a friend and check out mystudio.io. It's really going to help your business.